The city never sleeps. Every morning, before sunrise paints the skyline with shades of gold, thousands of people flood into towering office buildings carrying coffee cups, laptops, and dreams. Among them is Sarah Williams, a 28-year-old marketing assistant who believes that hard work always pays off. For 6 years, she has arrived before everyone else and left long after the office lights begin to dim. She has missed birthdays, skipped holidays, and sacrificed weekends, convinced that every extra hour was bringing her closer to the promotion she had dreamed about since graduating from college. Before we dive deeper, please subscribe, like, and comment. It greatly improved our output. To her coworkers, Sarah is dependable. To her managers, she is invisible. What she doesn't realize is that while she is planning for the future, someone else has already decided it for her. And by the end of this day, everything she has spent 6 years building will disappear in less than 5 minutes. The office feels strangely quiet. Normally, conversations echo through the hallways, keyboards click endlessly, and printers hum in the background. But today, something feels different. Employees avoid eye contact. Managers walk quickly from one meeting room to another with serious expressions. Then Sarah receives a short email. Please report to Mr. Carter's office at 10 a.m. She smiles. Maybe this is it. Maybe today is the promotion she has worked so hard for. She straightens her jacket, takes a deep breath, and walks confidently toward the executive office. Inside, Mr. Carter doesn't smile. He closes the door gently before speaking. Sarah, this isn't easy. Due to company restructuring, your position has been eliminated. For a few seconds, the room becomes completely silent. Sarah waits for him to continue. Maybe it's a mistake. Maybe he's joking. But he simply slides a white envelope across the table. Inside is her termination letter. 6 years of loyalty, reduced to a single sheet of paper. She leaves carrying nothing more than a cardboard box filled with family photos, notebooks, and a coffee mug that now feels strangely meaningless. Outside the building, life continues as though nothing has happened. But for Sarah, everything has changed. Back inside her small apartment, reality arrives much faster than emotion. Sarah places the cardboard box on the floor and quietly opens her laptop. Rent is due in 2 weeks. Electricity, internet, car payment, student loans. One by one, the bills pile up on the screen like heavy weights pressing against her future. She opens her banking app. The balance stares back at her. Enough money for barely a month. Maybe 2, if she spends almost nothing. For the first time in years, she feels genuinely afraid. Not because she lost a job, but because she doesn't know who she is without one. Late that evening, she begins scrolling through job websites. Hundreds of applications. Thousands of applicants. Every position demands experience she already has. Yet every listing seems to attract hundreds of desperate people just like her. The narrator pauses. Sometimes the hardest part of failure isn't falling. It's realizing everyone else keeps moving while you're still trying to stand. But unknown to Sarah, opportunity has already entered her life. She simply hasn't noticed it yet. The next afternoon, a gentle knock breaks the silence. Standing outside the apartment is Grandma Rose, carrying a warm pot of homemade vegetable soup and the same comforting smile Sarah has known since childhood. She doesn't ask about the job. She already knows. Instead, she quietly serves the soup while looking around the apartment. The unopened laptop, the scattered bills, the tired eyes. Everything tells the story. After several minutes of silence, Grandma Rose finally speaks. Do you remember when you were little and planted tomatoes in my backyard? Sarah laughs softly. Most of them died. Grandma smiles. Yes, but the ones that survived fed us all summer. She gently places her hand over Sarah's. Life has a strange way of closing doors that were never meant to be permanent. Sometimes losing something comfortable is the only way to discover something extraordinary. Those words settle deeply into Sarah's mind. She doesn't know it yet, but years later, she will repeat those exact words during interviews around the world. That night, unable to sleep, Sarah mindlessly scrolls through videos on her phone. Cooking videos, travel documentaries, business success stories. Nothing captures her attention. Just as she's about to turn off the screen, one thumbnail appears. A man stands inside a room filled from floor to ceiling with shelves covered in beautiful white oyster mushrooms. The title reads, How I Built a 6-Figure Mushroom Farm Inside My Garage. Sarah almost keeps scrolling. Almost. Instead, Curiosity wins. She taps the video. Within minutes, she's learning something she has never considered before. Mushrooms don't need huge farmland. They don't require expensive tractors. Some varieties grow in small indoor spaces. They mature in only a few weeks. Restaurants constantly need fresh supplies. The narrator slows. At first, it sounds impossible, almost too simple. But the more Sarah watches, the more one thought refuses to leave her mind. What if this isn't just another video? What if this is the opportunity I've been waiting for without even knowing it? She closes the video, looks around her tiny apartment, then stares at the empty spare room she has been using for storage. For the first time since losing her job, she doesn't see an empty room. She sees possibility. The following morning, Sarah wakes up earlier than she has in weeks. For the first time since losing her job, she has a reason to get out of bed. The uncertainty hasn't disappeared, but curiosity has quietly begun to replace fear. She spends the entire day researching mushroom farming. Every article she reads, every video she watches, and every forum she joins tells the same story. Successful mushroom farmers aren't necessarily the strongest or the richest. They're the ones who remain patient, pay attention to detail, and refuse to give up after their first mistake. Sarah grabs a notebook and begins writing everything she learns. Humidity, temperature, fresh air exchange, sterilization, growing substrate, spawn. Every page fills with diagrams, calculations, and questions. By evening, she opens her banking app one more time. The remaining balance makes her hesitate. If she spends this money, there will be no safety net, no backup plan. If she fails, she could lose everything. She closes her eyes and remembers Grandma Rose's words. Sometimes losing something comfortable is the only way to discover something extraordinary. The next morning, Sarah walks into a farming supply store and spends almost every dollar she has left on mushroom growing equipment. Shelving racks, plastic growing bags, humidity monitors, spray bottles, protective gloves, premium oyster mushroom spawn. As the cashier hands her the receipt, Sarah stares at the total. This isn't just a purchase. It's a promise to herself. A promise she can't afford to break. Although Sarah has bought the equipment, she quickly realizes that owning the tools doesn't mean she knows how to use them. Searching online, she discovers a local mushroom farmer named David, whose small indoor farm has quietly supplied restaurants for nearly a decade. His farm isn't flashy. There are no expensive machines, no massive warehouse, just neat rows of shelves filled with healthy mushrooms growing inside carefully managed rooms. Sarah nervously introduces herself. I lost my job, and I want to learn mushroom farming. David studies her for a moment before smiling. Most people come here asking how much money mushrooms can make. You're the first person who's asked how to grow them properly. He invites her inside. As they walk through the growing rooms, Sarah notices the fresh, earthy smell and the perfect rows of white oyster mushrooms stretching from floor to ceiling. David gently picks one cluster and hands it to her. These mushrooms may look fragile, he says, but they survive because every small detail is done correctly. He pauses before adding something Sarah never forgets. People don't fail because mushrooms are difficult. They fail because they rush the process. Sarah realizes she's about to begin learning much more than farming. She's about to learn patience. Over the next several weeks, Sarah transforms her empty storage room into a miniature mushroom farm. Shelves line the walls. Humidity machines quietly release cool mist into the air. Temperature sensors blink constantly. Every morning begins with careful inspections. Every evening ends with handwritten notes. At first, everything seems perfect. Then one morning, something changes. Several growing bags develop strange green patches. Another bag begins producing black mold. Within days, contamination spreads through nearly half of her first batch. The smell changes. The healthy, earthy aroma disappears, replaced by the unmistakable scent of decay. Sarah feels her heart sink. Weeks of work, hundreds of dollars, gone. She calls David. Instead of sounding disappointed, he calmly drives over. Looking around the room, he nods knowingly. Congratulations. Sarah looks at him in confusion. Congratulations? David smiles. You've just experienced your first real lesson. Every successful mushroom farmer remembers their first contaminated harvest. The only question is whether they quit afterward. For the first time, Sarah understands something important. Failure isn't the opposite of success. Sometimes, it's the beginning of it. Determined to improve, Sarah sterilizes everything. Every shelf, every tool, every growing container. She starts again from the beginning, following David's instructions with absolute precision. Days pass. Nothing happens. Then one quiet morning, while checking the shelves with a flashlight, she notices something unusual. Tiny white threads begin spreading through one growing bag. Another follows. Then another. The white network slowly expands like delicate roots weaving through the growing material. David smiles when he sees them. That's healthy mycelium. Your mushrooms are waking up. Sarah watches closely over the following days. Small white pins emerge. Then tiny mushrooms. Within a week, dozens of beautiful oyster mushrooms begin forming elegant clusters. For most people, they would simply look like mushrooms. To Sarah, they look like hope. The narrator reflects. Every business has a moment when an impossible dream begins looking surprisingly real. This was hers. Only a few days later, the mushrooms reach full size. Large, fresh, perfectly shaped. Sarah carefully cuts each cluster by hand, placing them into clean wooden baskets exactly as David taught her. She can't stop smiling. She weighs the harvest. It isn't huge. It won't make her rich. Not yet. But holding those baskets in her hands feels completely different from holding the cardboard box she carried out of her office only weeks earlier. Back then, she carried the end of one chapter. Today, she's holding the beginning of another. David looks proudly at the harvest. These mushrooms won't change your life. Sarah looks slightly disappointed. Then David continues. But the skills you use to grow them absolutely will. That afternoon, Sarah places the baskets into her car. She has no customers. No business contracts. No marketing experience. Only fresh mushrooms and a growing belief that someone, somewhere, will recognize their quality. As she starts the engine, she whispers quietly to herself, "Let's see who believes in this as much as I do." She drives away toward the city, completely unaware that one unexpected conversation is about to transform her tiny harvest into the first step of a thriving business. The next morning, before the sun has fully risen, Sarah carefully loads baskets of freshly harvested oyster mushrooms into the trunk of her small sedan. Every mushroom has been cleaned, trimmed, and packed with care. Looking at them, she feels a quiet sense of pride. These mushrooms are more than food. They represent weeks of learning, countless mistakes, and every dollar she had left. She drives into the city with one simple goal: convince someone to buy them. Her first stop is a family-owned restaurant known for serving fresh, locally sourced ingredients. Sarah walks in, introduces herself, and politely asks if the chef has a moment. The chef barely glances at the baskets. "We already have a supplier," he says before walking away. The second restaurant isn't much different. "Sorry, we're not interested." At the third, the manager doesn't even open the basket. "Leave your card. We'll call you if we need anything." Sarah knows that means they probably never will. Hour after hour, the same answer follows her from one restaurant to another. No, no, no. By late afternoon, the mushrooms are still in her car, untouched. She parks beside a quiet river and rests her head on the steering wheel. For a brief moment, she wonders if everyone else was right. Maybe she should have searched for another office job. Maybe this dream had been too unrealistic from the beginning. But just as doubt begins to take over, her phone rings. It's David. "How did today go?" Sarah forces a smile he can't see. "I learned that rejection comes free with every business." David laughs softly. "Good." Sarah looks confused. "Good. Because every successful entrepreneur learns to hear no without letting it become the final answer." Those words stay with her as she starts the engine again. Tomorrow, she will try one more time. The following morning, Sarah notices a small restaurant tucked between two larger buildings. It isn't crowded. The sign outside simply reads, "Harvest Table." Something tells her to stop. Inside, the warm aroma of freshly prepared food fills the room. Behind the counter is Chef Michael, the restaurant's owner, known for creating seasonal dishes using local ingredients. Sarah introduces herself, expecting another rejection. Instead, Chef Michael smiles. "Let's have a look." He carefully opens one basket. His expression changes immediately. He gently picks up a mushroom, examining its color, texture, and freshness. "These were harvested today?" "Early this morning," Sarah replies. Without saying another word, he walks into the kitchen. A few minutes later, he returns carrying a small plate. He has sautéed the mushrooms with butter, garlic, and herbs. He offers Sarah the first bite. The flavor is rich, earthy, and incredibly fresh. Chef Michael nods with approval. I've worked with mushrooms for 20 years. These are some of the freshest oyster mushrooms I've tasted. Sarah can hardly believe what she's hearing. Then he says the words she has been hoping for. I'll take every basket you've brought today. For the first time since losing her job, Sarah doesn't just feel hopeful. She feels validated. Someone finally believes in her work. And sometimes, that's all it takes to change everything. The following week, Sarah delivers another order to Harvest Table. This time, customers begin asking an unexpected question. Where do these mushrooms come from? Chef Michael proudly points towards Sarah. Local grower. Freshly harvested yesterday. Word begins spreading. Food bloggers write about the restaurant's new mushroom dishes. Photos appear across social media. Customers praise the freshness and unique flavor. Soon another restaurant calls. Then another. Then a local grocery store asks whether she can supply them every Friday. Sarah's phone, once silent for days, now rings constantly. She buys a whiteboard and hangs it in her growing room. Every new customer gets written across it. Monday deliveries. Wednesday restaurants. Friday markets. The whiteboard slowly fills until there is barely any empty space left. Late one evening, Sarah looks around her tiny indoor farm. Every shelf is full. Every growing bag is occupied. Every available corner has become productive. The room that once stored forgotten boxes now produces something far more valuable. Opportunity. But with every opportunity comes a new challenge. Sarah has customers. She has demand. What she no longer has is enough space. As orders continue increasing, Sarah begins working nearly 18 hours a day. She harvests mushrooms before sunrise, packages deliveries by mid-morning, cleans growing rooms during the afternoon, sterilizes equipment late into the night. Sleep becomes a luxury. Even weekends disappear. One evening, Grandma Rose quietly watches Sarah organizing another shipment. You're working harder than you did in your office. Sarah smiles. Yes. But this time, every hour builds something that belongs to me. Those words remind Grandma Rose of the determined little girl who once planted vegetables in her backyard. Sarah realizes she has reached another turning point. She can't continue growing alone. Using the profits from her first few months, she rents a small warehouse on the edge of town. The empty building echoes with possibility. Rows of industrial shelving replace the tiny racks in her apartment. Professional humidity systems are installed. Ventilation fans begin humming. For the first time, Sarah isn't building a hobby. She's building a real company. As production increases, Sarah quickly realizes another truth. A business doesn't grow because of one person. It grows because of people working together. She places an advertisement in the local newspaper. No farming experience required. Training provided. The first applicant is a young father who recently lost his factory job. The second is a single mother looking for flexible work. The third is a college student struggling to pay tuition. Sarah hires them all. Instead of simply giving instructions, she teaches them everything David once taught her. Sterilization, humidity control, harvest timing, quality inspection. She wants them to understand the science behind every mushroom they grow. Within weeks, laughter replaces silence inside the warehouse. Employees work together like family. The business continues expanding. Local farmers begin supplying agricultural waste that Sarah transforms into mushroom-growing substrate, creating additional income throughout the community. One afternoon, while watching her team carefully harvest thousands of mushrooms, Sarah quietly reflects on how quickly life has changed. Just months ago, she wondered how she would pay next month's rent. Now, she is helping other families pay theirs. The narrator pauses. Sometimes success isn't measured by the money you earn. Sometimes it's measured by the opportunities you create for others. But just as Sarah begins believing the hardest part of her journey is behind her, a familiar face walks through the warehouse doors. For a brief moment, time seems to stop. Neither of them speaks. The last time they stood face to face was inside a corporate office, where one sentence changed the direction of Sarah's life forever. Now, everything is different. Mr. Carter slowly looks around the warehouse, taking in the rows of mushrooms, the busy employees, and the trucks waiting outside. His expression says more than words ever could. He isn't looking at someone who lost her job. He's looking at someone who built an entirely new future. Sarah invites Mr. Carter into a small office overlooking the warehouse floor. Through the large glass window, employees continue harvesting mushrooms while delivery teams prepare orders for restaurants and grocery stores across the city. For several seconds, silence fills the room. Finally, Mr. Carter speaks. Sarah, I honestly didn't know what happened after you left. He pauses before continuing. I heard someone mention your company at a business networking event. At first, I didn't believe it could be you. He smiles awkwardly. Then I searched your name. I realized I had to come and see it for myself. Sarah simply listens. There is no anger in her expression, only quiet confidence. Mr. Carter lowers his eyes. I'm sorry, not because the company restructured, but because I never recognized your potential while you worked for us. Sarah looks out through the office window, toward the people working together below. Then she smiles. If you hadn't let me go, I'd probably still be sitting behind a desk, wondering if someone else would decide my future. She turns back toward him. Losing my job felt like the worst day of my life. Now I realize it was the day my real life began. Mr. Carter nods slowly. Some lessons are impossible to learn inside an office. Months pass, and Sarah's company continues expanding beyond anything she once imagined. The warehouse becomes too small. A second facility opens in a neighboring town. Then a third. Her mushrooms begin supplying hotels, supermarkets, gourmet restaurants, and meal delivery companies throughout the region. But Sarah refuses to measure success only by production numbers. Every month, she hosts free workshops teaching unemployed people, students, and aspiring farmers how to start small indoor mushroom farms with limited budgets. Some attendees arrive carrying notebooks filled with questions. Others arrive carrying the same fear Sarah once felt after losing her job. She tells them the truth. You don't need to begin with a huge farm. You need to begin before fear convinces you not to. One by one, her former students begin launching businesses of their own. Some grow mushrooms from spare bedrooms. Others convert garages or unused storage buildings into productive farms. An entire network of small growers begins forming around Sarah's company, supplying fresh mushrooms while creating jobs in communities that had long struggled with unemployment. Without realizing it, Sarah has become more than an entrepreneur. She has become a mentor. One bright spring afternoon, Sarah drives down a quiet country road with Grandma Rose sitting beside her. Grandma smiles, enjoying the peaceful scenery, unaware of where they're going. Eventually, Sarah turns into a long driveway lined with flowering trees. At the end stands a beautiful countryside home surrounded by gardens, fruit trees, and a small greenhouse. Grandma looks confused. Whose house is this? Sarah reaches into her bag and gently places a set of keys into Grandma Rose's hands. It's yours. For a moment, Grandma cannot speak. Tears slowly fill her eyes. Years earlier, Sarah had promised herself that if life ever gave her another chance, the first person she would thank would be the woman who believed in her before anyone else did. Together, they walk through the gardens until they reach a small mushroom house Sarah built beside the greenhouse. Grandma laughs softly. You still can't stay away from mushrooms. Sarah smiles. Neither can you. They harvest fresh oyster mushrooms together, just as they once picked tomatoes in Grandma's backyard. Only this time, the harvest represents far more than food. It represents perseverance, gratitude, and a promise fulfilled. The camera slowly moves through Sarah's largest mushroom facility. Employees carefully harvest beautiful clusters of mushrooms. Delivery trucks leave one after another. Customers enjoy meals prepared with fresh produce that began inside these growing rooms. The narrator speaks calmly. People often believe success begins with a brilliant idea, but more often, it begins with an unexpected ending. A lost job, a closed door, a season of uncertainty. Sarah didn't become successful because she never failed. She became successful because every setback taught her something valuable, and every lesson gave her the courage to keep moving forward. The screen shows photographs of Sarah's journey. The tiny apartment, the first contaminated mushroom bags, the first restaurant order, the first warehouse, the growing team, the workshops, Grandma Rose smiling proudly. Finally, Sarah stands at the entrance of her largest facility as the sun sets behind rows of mushroom houses. She looks toward the horizon, remembering the frightened young woman who once carried a cardboard box out of an office building. She whispers quietly, "Thank you for closing that door." The narrator concludes, Sometimes life removes you from the place where you are comfortable so it can lead you to the place where you truly belong. The question isn't whether you'll face setbacks. The question is what you'll choose to build because of them. Final call to action. If Sarah's journey inspired you, imagine what opportunity might be waiting in your own life. Share in the comments. What dream have you been afraid to start? Your story could inspire someone else. And if you enjoyed this animation, subscribe for more powerful farming success stories where ordinary people achieve extraordinary results, one harvest at a time. Asterisk.